Hey there, hi there, ho there, boys and girls. James J. Patterson here once again, coming to you live from the reading room at Allen Squire Publishing, a small press with big ideas. Okay, I've really been looking forward to today because I'm going to read from three books that I just love. And a few weeks ago, I read from Joanna Bigger's novel, and uh, uh, there are these books, Melody Song. There's these books on independent presses by women that I think men should read. Now, I'll never succeed in my little project to get men to read some of these books, uh, but they show men the way women see them. And I think men should see the way women see them once in a while, unencumbered, unadorned, just the naked truth. And so we're gonna get hit hard today by three of these. Um, uh, the Secret Woman by Rose Solari, uh, uh, Dethroned by Branka Cubrilo, and Silver Girl by Leslie Pietrzyk. And each one of these books uh, has uh, has women characters who are immune to bullshit. They are their own people. They are immune to the projections that people put on them. And the more they try to resist these projections, and the more they come cascading in all around them. And the strategies that they have to deal with them are pretty straightforward. My kind of girls. Anyway, but before I get into all that, I want to ask you sincerely, did you stop in at Rose Reed's last Wednesday? Because Mark Pritchard, who is a writer and an actor from Oxford, England, hosted Rose Reed's last Wednesday, and it was a variety show. It was fantastic. He invited another actor friend of his, Steve Hay, to join him. Now, Steve is a Scotsman, and Mark is an Englishman. And as Max, our number one guy here at Allen Squire, said afterwards, he said, it was ear candy. The whole thing was ear candy. They started out with a song from Iggy Pop uh, um, uh, uh, called Lust for Life. And so that played, and that was raucous. And then the two guys got in there and they read some poems, uh, uh, George Edward Hopping, and they have scripts. Now they're actors, so they have screen scripts all over the place. And they have one from Train Spotting. Now, The Lust for Life was the song for Train Spotting. And so they read some of the Train Spotting screen script, including, camera pans, this that happens, that happens. It was absolute riot. And then they ended up with a big dance at the end, dance party at the end to Iggy. Uh, Iggy Pop. So it was just a riot. I've watched it three times, and it's right here on the Allen Squire Publishing page somewhere next to where you're seeing me right now. So after this, if you haven't seen it yet, you'll know it because it's a stack of books. They had a stack of books, and they peeled away the books one after another. And there was Mark sitting there. Mark's a biker, and he got to read about being a biker, writer, actor. That's a pretty good combination if you're looking for interesting people in your life. Anyway, Pritchard's a monster, and I love him. Okay, so is A. Okay, let's get down to the taxes here. I'm going to start out today with, and Rose, by the way, is back at her normal post on Rose Reads on Wednesday. So we're all looking forward to that. Uh, but kudos to the people that took her place while she was gone. Joanna Bigger, Linda McFerrin, and Mark. Anyway, okay, so here it is, A Secret Woman. Now, Rose wrote this book a bunch of years ago, 90, 2004, I guess it was, I don't know. Anyway, in brief, the book has three timelines, uh, 2006, 1995, and the 11th century, 1120, 12th century. And uh, uh, and a woman has left her husband twice. The second time she never comes back, and she goes off to England. 10 years later, when she dies, she leaves her personal effects to her daughter. Now, her daughter and she are estranged. Louise Terry is the daughter, and she's an artist, and she's in her 30s. And she's successful in the sense that she gets to keep making her art and pay her rent and groceries. Excuse me. And so she keeps at it. Now, any artist knows, whether you're a musician, a painter, or whatever, you know you're only as good as your last piece and the last thing you sold, and so there's a little tension always to move on to the next thing. As soon as you have a little success, it's not over. You got to start all over again. And so Louise is in this place right now, and uh, uh, and so she finds out that her mother had this secret life, and she has the journals and she's going to go through it. Now, she and her mother didn't get along, and she can't believe that her mother trusted her with this after never trusting her with anything ever. And so she's a little angry, and she's not wondering if she shouldn't dump them all in the river and say Masalama, but she doesn't. And so we're gonna join her. Now she has an on again, off again lover, and his name is TJ, and he owns a bar, her favorite bar, and uh, and so he drops in from time to time, and we're going to see them now. Here we go. I opened my eyes and saw that the sky through the window shades was just beginning to lighten. TJ's jeans were still where he'd tossed them the night before at the foot of the bed, his boots leaning against my closet door. Then he walked into the bedroom in his boxers, wiping his face on a towel. Got a delivery to meet, half an hour. Didn't want to wake you. That's all right. A kiss? Sure. He sat beside me on the bed, pulled me into his arms, kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my mouth. There was a small, sharp shriek from the floor below, a pause, then another shriek, and then a torrent of crying began. They've got a new grandbaby visiting, I said. Try to ignore it. He kissed me and laughed. That's okay. Baby sounds don't bother me. Well, that makes one of us. That's because you're so sensitive, my artist, he said, and kissed me again. Below us, we heard a woman's hushing voice, and the baby's cries subsiding. It occurred to me that I had never heard TJ call me his, not even in this light-hearted way. Hey, he said, I figure we've all got to deal with it sooner or later. No use making a fuss. Deal with what? Baby's crying in the wee morning hours. Diapers to change in the middle of the night. It's going to happen, even to people like us. Like us? You know, the ones who play around for a while, who take their time settling down. We still want the same stuff everybody else does. I felt my body stiffen. He drew back, looked at me carefully. What's that look mean? I was just wondering what it is that we're all supposed to want. A home, a partner, family, kids. That's what we're all looking for, right? Not me. I said, that's not what I'm looking for. Not at all. He pulled away then and got up to put on his jeans. Well, okay, he said, maybe looking is the wrong word. A woman like you doesn't have to go looking. I know that. He zipped up his jeans, reached for the sweater he'd thrown over the back of my chair. I mean, one day some guy who's been circling who knows how long is going to make his move, say, come on, girl, let's go make some babies. Oh, please. That's about the least appealing invitation I've ever heard. We probably should have dropped the subject, but his conviction, this business of us all wanting the same things, angered me. I don't want, I said, to make anybody's babies. I've got art to make. Some people, he said cautiously, do both, have both, a career and kids. He pulled his sweater over his head. I mean, didn't Picasso have children? If he did, I'm sure it was the mother who did all the work. But what if your life was different? What if you married, now I'm just thinking out loud, married, say, a guy who made some dough, who stayed in one place for his work, not like your ex, and he hired somebody, you know, a nanny to take care of the kids while you painted. No good. I mean, that's not enough. I want my whole life for me. A steady guy, sure. I'd like to do that again, to have a partner, but no kids? He asked. No. So you would never even consider it? I have considered it, I said, and I've decided against it. Can I ask why? It's just not for me, motherhood. It would make me miserable, I'm sure of it. Wow, he said. I've never known a woman who felt that way before. I was angry now and sick of talking. It had been years since I had had to defend my decision not to become a mother to anybody. Most of my artist friends understood, didn't even comment. Natalie had always felt the same way. Besides, it made no sense to me that TJ should get so worked up about the subject. This must have something to do with Elizabeth, his steady girlfriend. I thought, maybe she's pushing the baby talk. It can't have anything to do with me. I stretched, looking toward the window. I need to get some more sleep, I said. I walked him to the door like I always did, and he kissed me goodbye. The irritation I'd felt vanished, and it occurred to me that it would be hard to stay mad at TJ for very long about anything. He's just too simple, too straightforward a guy. And then I shook it all off and went back to bed for a few more hours of sleep. But later, in the studio, the conversation came back to me. It made me all angry all over again. I had thought TJ was more enlightened than that. To think that every woman in the world longed to have a child. How narrow-minded, how short-sighted, how very male. And he subscribed to the old dollar theory. If you just had the right man, the right amount of money, you'd say yes. Even Dylan, who had been a bit of a Neanderthal when it comes to women, was too smart for that. But then it was very clear in our family that whatever having children did for a woman, it certainly did not guarantee happiness or even contentment. I knew that without reading my mother's journal. I knew that without reading my mother's journal. No wonder Dylan was the only one of the three of us to have a child. Now she's going to read those mother's journals and discover that secret life that she had led. And it sends her on a mission to England to trace her mother's steps. But now we're going to go back in time a decade to when her real mother went to England, left the family. And this is her mother, Margaret. The light in London is nothing like the light at home. In Maryland, the blue sky is shot with gold on September afternoons and slants into your eyes. Here, gray-blue clouds shed a quieter, silvery light. It feels kinder somehow, which makes Margaret feel kinder toward herself. She does not feel guilty this morning about the family she has left behind. Again. She finishes her tea, pays her receipt at the bake shop counter, and carries her things outside. Despite the cost, she thinks it best to hail a cab to Paddington Station, where she will take the train to Oxford. The map confounds her, and she's none too sure about the tube. Yesterday, she'd gotten lost trying to find Harrods and had walked in circles, her feet aching until the sort of grim and anxious mood settled over her that she had been trying to avoid. Hard to control these moods, and yet they must surely be normal, after all she has been through, and after all she has decided, then redecided, then undone. Her doctor's solution is in her purse, but Margaret has yet to swallow one of the yellow tablets. There have been various diagnoses, depression, bipolar disorder, OCD, and various solutions, always in the form of a pill. She carries the little orange plastic bottle with her in her purse like a sad talisman. Serotonin reuptake inhibitors. John wishes she would take them. Wished, she corrects herself. When they were still a couple, John wished that she would take them. There's a bookstore on the corner, and she decides to stop and pick up a volume to read on the train. As she reaches the shop door, a man pushes it open from inside, holding it for her while she manages her bulky suitcase and shoulder bag. He has a stack of 2 or 3 cloth-bound books under an arm covered in beige linen. She sees only bits of him: white shirt, charcoal trousers, thin dark hair. As she hurries past, struggling with the weight of her things, he reaches out one hand as if to help her to catch whatever she is about to drop. But she steps past him with a quick thank you, ducking her way over and through the threshold. The store's dusty window displays give no hint of the chaos and pleasure that lie inside. It's an orgy of books, volumes stashed in every conceivable space, on top of radiators and windowsills, books piled sideways and jammed into shelves on top of other upright books, or stacked on the floor in precarious towers. Margaret wants to dive in and wander the aisles with no plan, no shape to her attack, but her itinerary leaves her too little time to work that way. She threads her way between the piles of books to the register, where a pleasant-faced woman quite round in the middle, is barely visible between two stacks. She pauses in her task of penciling prices to offer Margaret a printed map of the store. Yes, the works on medieval British history would be on the next floor. Yes, she can set her bag behind the register while she looks. Do watch your step, madam, the woman says. Those stairs are tricky. And she nods at Margaret's narrow-toed high heels. Outside the shop window, the man who held the door for her stands beneath the awning, for a moment, watching her set down her unwieldy bag, shake back her hair, and survey the map. Aside from her accent, he has only heard two words. There is a kind of shiny newness to her clothes, her eyes, that makes him sure she's American. Her face is earnest and pretty, intelligent, and a little sad. And he creates briefly a backstory for her, a lecturer, he thinks, from some university in the States, where she teaches undergraduates about modern poetry, perhaps even the American novel. Probably a feminist something or other, despite the makeup. Probably divorced, he chuckles, admires her legs. Her stomach rumbles. His stomach rumbles with a distraction. Lawrence Ware looks at his watch and decides to take a table at the restaurant across the alley from the bookshop. Order a coffee at biscotti. It's several hours before he must drive home, and he is in no great hurry to get there anyway. If the waiter recognizes him, he gives no sign of it. Lawrence winces, remembering a different time. When the fallacy of pleasure was running, strangers pointed at him on the street and whispered. Michael Billington in The Guardian said the British theater had found the next Joe Orton in Lawrence Ware. And then, well, this and that had not worked out. Some of it had been admittedly his fault. That film deal, for example, all the things he missed. But still it seemed to him that fame and fate were too unfair. For a brief time, London had loved him. Then, suddenly, all the talk was of Tom Stoppard and some American named Mammoth. Though the city was still the center of his affection, London seemed to have moved on. He should have used his time in the sun more wisely. He should have found a way to hold on to his luck. He has enormous plans, a plan so ambitious, so ingenious, really, that it will silence all his critics, including himself, most of all himself. That is part of what these books are for. And with that thought, he takes a volume from the top of the pile, shoves the rest to the other side of the table. From his pocket, he takes a pen and a small notebook, spiral-bound, unlined, sets them next to the book, and begins to read. And as he does so, turning away from the text from time to time to make a note, the rain begins to fall softly outside. It is slow at first, even kind. It would feel warm if he were out in it. It would caress him. He motions to the waiter for more coffee, but it is lunchtime now, and a small queue has formed just inside the window. Carlo is, for the moment, too busy to see him. Ware's eyes pass over the men and women gathered there, shaking the rain from their clothes, pushing damp hair out of their eyes. Just behind a pair of businessmen, he sees the American professor. Margaret has belted a trench coat tight against the weather, and while he watches, she loosens it, shakes it open. The sudden flash of her blue and white print dress is innocently lovely. He wishes he had a better view of her legs. Meanwhile, Margaret is annoyed with herself for not wearing more sensible shoes. As the waiter leads her to her table, she moves carefully, trying not to slip on the damp tiles as she struggles with the weight of her purse and suitcase. Watching her precise steps, Lawrence feels the absurd, delicious rush of joy that unexpected happy circumstances bring. For Carlo is leading the American lady to the table on his left. She slips past him to take the seat against the wall, so that they are sitting beside each other. Then gives the waiter her coat, accepts the menu. Thank you. She has a shiny voice with deep pitches and awkward lilts. Lawrence believes he is something of an expert in American accents. He guesses she is from the West Coast, perhaps Northern California. He turns a page, pretending to be deep in thought, while he watches her read the menu. Her face, from the side, serious, purposeful, as it had been when she read the bookstore map. She closes the menu, reaches into her bag, and takes out a thin book. He sees that it is Helen Waddell's Peter Abelard. Ah, Waddell, he murmurs to himself. Yes, the true lover. As if he were directing her, she turns her head, cocks it a little at him. Pardon me? I love that there's a subtleness in this passage where you're going, like I said, third person omniscient. It goes from one mind to the other. You know those movies where an evil spirit has entered somebody's body, and the way it moves around is he has that it has that person touch someone, and then the evil spirit passes into them, and then the evil spirit passes into the next person he or she touches and goes all the way up the street. Well, third person semi omniscient is kind of like that. You know, you're in this person's mind, and you're in that person's mind, and with a good writer like Solari, that happens seamlessly, and you don't even know it. You're just in this bubble of awareness that these characters are in. And when a writer is that good at it, you read a book real fast and you miss things. You know, these kind of books you should, even when a book is fast to read, you should slow down. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so we got the three timelines, and then there are whole chapters about characters that kind of mirror the contemporary people in the 12th century sections. And it all starts to kind of pull together. It's just an excellent read, and I highly recommend it. And the 12th century cross-dressing nun falls in love with a Galliard, who's much like a musician that Louise Terry knows. And together they get into a craziness in Glastonbury and end up burning down the cathedral. and like, remember when I said artists, you know, they end one thing and they jump into another and they have to start all over again. Well, the art that Louise Terry makes from this adventure shows up on the cover of the book. And there it is, Glastonbury Abbey, burning down. I love it. Oh, and this is Randy Stannard again, by the way. And Chris Andrews took the photograph of the ruin that Randy burned down. And Chris Andrews has a few of his wonderful photos. He's a photographer in Oxford, and he takes, you know, photographs that tourists like to buy. There's Oxford there. And then we have our secret woman in the back. I'm proud of this shit, so, you know, you have to bear with me. There she is, the secret woman. So there's a lot of secret women in these books. We're going to meet a couple more right now. So that's a secret woman. By the way, get on over to Allen Square and pick that up. Do us a favor, will you? Okay, here we go. Now this one was a real challenge. And when I talk about, you know, men need, just once in their life, you need to see yourself through a woman's eyes. You need to see and hear yourself through a woman's eyes. Preferably a woman you're trying to impress, because actually you really don't want any part of that, but you really should experience it once or twice. Well, anyway, this book is called Dethroned, and it's kind of an international epic. You know, Branka Cubrilo is a wonderful writer, and I got to know her a little bit. Out of the clear blue a few years ago, I got a Facebook message from a woman named Branka Cubrilo, and the message said, "Mr. Patterson, I have just read parts of my recent book. It was her current book back then, and I'd like you to go and listen." And I wrote her right back, and I said, "Ms. Cubrilo, I hope you understand that I'm not that James Patterson." And she goes, "I know that. I just thought you might like to hear it." All right. And I went and listened. She has this thick Serbian accent. It's really great to hear her. And the book she had written was called The Mosaic of the Broken Soul, and it was about her, or the main character, getting breast cancer. And she called the tumor in her breast a little black pearl. It's a great metaphor. And what happens to her is her husband leaves her, you know, because she's sick. Her husband leaves her, her life falls apart, and she you know, she heals her mind. She comes out of it okay, but she has to go through a whole restructuring of who she is in the aftermath of how people reacted to. Yeah, James Luke, I'd like a cough drop if you don't mind. I'm a little raspy today. So anyway, when Branka's new book, Dethroned, came out. I'm determined to read it. And this is an epic. Uh, uh, it's after World War II in Serbia, Croatia, that part of the world, and they go from one war to another, and then to a civil war, and the fascists and the communists and the capitalists are all killing each other, and they just not stop. And the book is about it's about a lot of things, but what I was tracking through the book were these two teenage girls who graduate from high school just as another war is breaking out, and they're both lovely, smart, intelligent women. One is a poet, and one is kind of a pragmatist, and they're friends. But they realize the hard way that they've just got to get out of this part of the world, and they go to London, not together. And so they set out in their own ways of solving their problems. Now, the main character here is Pia Odak, and Pia is a raven-haired, beautiful woman who's a poet, and uh, and the men are come after her with hooks and tongs all the time. When people aren't getting shot all around her, having to hide and do all this stuff, she's got to deal with every guy in the world who won't take no for a goddamn answer, and and uh, and and she's calm as a cucumber. She knows herself. She's like Louise Terry, and later like the Silver Girl. She knows herself, and so she's not threatened so much as just wildly inconvenienced by the attentions these guys give her. This is what she says when she meets a guy who likes her. Never take me seriously. I am not a woman who will stay. I never stayed, and I never will. I don't love, as I am not gifted in that field. But we can stay friends as long as we both wish to. And she has to find 1,100 ways of saying that. And here's one little episode. I think she's in a cafe with her guy she's been dating named Tim for a year. He read her poetry, her essays, and short stories. He tried to get to know her through her dark poetry, but every time he thought that he knew her at least a little bit better, a new poem would come and reveal something new, often something disturbing, dark, almost dangerous, as if there were some irreparable mistake or loss, some cry hidden on the following page that hadn't been written yet. The more he knew Pia, the more he feared that he would never really get to know her. He feared that she was just a short paragraph added to the book of his own history. It had been almost a year since he'd started dating Pia. They were sitting in a cafe. She had a lunch break. He said, I fear you, Pia. Often I fear you. Why? Sometimes you are so distant, unavailable. I am. I always am. Why so? I'm distant. I told you not to take me too seriously. I told you never to let me know that you need me or miss me. It wasn't a joke. I don't miss people. What's wrong then? Wrong? Yeah, I think something went wrong sometime in your life. Nothing went wrong. I don't need people. I am happiest when I am alone. But what am I to you, Pia? A friend? A friend? Nothing more than a friend? No. We've been together a year, and yet to you I am no more than a friend. Don't get agitated. How could I not get agitated? I love you, Pia, and you're telling me that there's nothing more between us than friendship? She was stirring the rest of her coffee with a small spoon. He stopped her hand and said, Look at me. Look into my eyes. Tell me now that there's nothing else between us but plain friendship. Don't insist. What do you mean by don't insist? You don't love me, do you? She shook her head barely, visibly, and he felt as if a sharp knife was thrust into his heart. Say it. She looked at the table. Her hands were resting on the table, her head rocking slowly. Her silky hair was waving as if saying a silent goodbye to the man who sat next to her, and in utter disbelief gazed at her waving hair. He put his finger under her chin and said quietly, lifting her head up, Say it, please. Verbalize it, Pia. You know that. What do I know? I think you have a problem. I never asked you to love me. You never asked? Do you think that love has to be asked for? Wasn't all I have done enough for you, for us? And you want to say that you have never asked for it? Is that what you're saying? She nodded her head. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to go away, to disappear from your life? Do you want me to stop loving you? I don't want anything, Tim. I never asked you to love me. You shouldn't ask. Love happens, Pia. How did you see our relationship? What was I to you, a friend? I don't fall in love, as I don't need love. You don't need love. Slightly, she lifted her left shoulder and bit her lip. What the hell is wrong with you, Pia? Nothing's wrong with me. I don't need people. If you walked away now, it wouldn't be a disaster. I wouldn't be upset or unhappy. Tim, I don't get upset, please, but I simply don't have those feelings. For me. It's me, isn't it? No, it's me. He stood up and walked away. She sat there overwhelmed with feelings of relief. She liked him in her own way, but she couldn't share Pia. No, she couldn't share Pia with anyone. The next morning, Tim called to ask if she wanted to talk about it again. He asked if she was sure about her feelings. All she said to a rather confused man was, I never needed a lasting friendship. Everything is so transient. It wasn't a friendship. There was more to it. It wasn't a friendship. There was more to it. Don't get upset. You can't handle feelings. No, it's not about that. Just I don't feel like sharing right now. Have you ever shared anything with anyone? Please don't get upset. It's late and I'm cold and I'm off to bed. Good night. Well, as I said, Pia's comes from a country that was in the middle of a revolution, after a country that was in war, a country that after the revolution is then going to have a civil war. She came home from school one day and her mother was sitting on the kitchen floor with both her wrists. And when Pia went to help her, she said, don't help me, just talk to me. So they talked while she died. Her grandmother, the only other woman in the world that she cared for, was shot by a sniper, just for target practice. So she's come from a pretty harsh world. And bullshit just isn't part of her vocabulary. And she is not going to romanticize the projections that are put on her. And so in this sense, her great looks are kind of a curse. And that's just a part of the rest of the stuff that goes on in here. So that's a real compelling read. And I think that I like some of the guys I know read it. And there's a lot of action and murder and death and all that stuff. But so let's take a look. Come out, wherever you are, who's in here today. I'll get on to Silver Girl in a couple of minutes because that's going to drop you. Joanna Bigger. Oh, man. How are you? There's JB. Who else have we got? Leela Moores. Hey, were you there when I read about Heidi Coper? Come on. It was last week. Laura Strong. Dilla Santos. Raphael. How you doing, big boy? Good to see you. Leslie's in the house. Uh-oh, now I'm nervous. Lorena Rivas, one of my favorite people. All right, here it comes. Now, these women in these two books have that thing in common where they know who they are, and they don't need anybody telling them who they are. And here we're going to meet a similar character who, completely different circumstances. She's from the poor side of a small Iowa town, and she's been accepted to a university in Chicago. And she's broke. She's got 2-3 jobs going all the time. Her family's a mess. Her father's unreliable. Who knows where her mother is? And she's got this little sister that is kind of the rock in her mind. There's a wonderful character in the Branka Cubrilo book, Dethroned. He's a Down syndrome boy, about 10. And whereas everybody in the country hates everybody, this little boy just loves everything, loves everyone. And Pia and her friend Veronica, he's the only person that they are truly, truly in love with. And of course he dies because it's just a rough and tumble, awful place. And but he becomes the spiritual center of that book. And This Silver Girl's little sister uh, has a heroic role to play, although she's not really a prominent character. But she's got a heroic role to play in keeping Silver Girl's feet on the ground. And Silver Girl's a piece of work. Um, the whole time I was reading Silver Girl, I was thinking, this character reminds me of Holden Caulfield. You know how Holden Caulfield, and you're always in that internal dialogue, and he might be just saying, "Hey, how are you?" to somebody, but he's going to look at that jackass. You know, this guy's a phony all the way. He's this, that, and the other thing. And Holden Caulfield's interior dialogue is just fantastic. And this young woman has a kind of a similar thing. And I remember when I read it, I sent Leslie a note, and I said, uh, "This girl, Silver Girl, never tells anybody her name. Nobody. You never know her name through this whole narrative." And I was saying to Leslie, I don't know Leslie very well, but I said, I think Holden Caulfield would have liked having a girlfriend who wouldn't tell you her name. Anyway, let's have a little Silver Girl, okay? I'll give you 3 short clips from here. The phone in the kitchen wall rang. Jess, her roommate, and I stared at it in surprise. Though we had been sharing this off-campus apartment for a week already, we still didn't feel as though we belonged here, and the ringing phone seemed to emphasize exactly how out of place we were. "You answer," she whispered. It was 11 a.m., hardly a time for whispering, but I whispered back, "No, you." And then we laughed. Freshman year, we were crammed into the hormonal all-girls dorm that had been built with money donated to the university in the early 60s by some uptight woman who feared the coming sexual revolution. The school packed all the freshman girls there. The halls smelled like hairspray and popcorn. And someone was always crying in the bathroom stall about what a boy did or didn't do. The joke was that entire floors of girls synced their periods. It was a place to escape from. The next year we escaped to North Campus, the land of frat parties and frisbees slicing through the quad and stereo speakers propped against window screens on sunny days. You remember that? Now we were juniors, living together off campus on the first floor of a small stacked duplex half a block from the L tracks. I had arrived the week before she had and was already immune to the screech and rattle of the trains. The phone kept ringing. This was before answering machines, before voicemail, email, text, and Skype. Letters and phone calls were all we had. This was a time when not answering a ringing phone was an act of subversion. You know, I love that. I never answered the damn phone either. We wanted to be subversive, or I did, secretly. That was something we had in common. Secret desires. Secrets. I just picked up. "Hello?" Her voice croaked. She spoke more forcefully. "I mean, hello?" I laughed. We laughed a lot. We laughed at everything back then. Everything was funny. She listened for a moment, her face nodding into annoyance. "I'm not coming back home, Mom. No." Then she twirled, letting the extra long cord wrap around herself once, twice, her back to me now. "No," she repeated the word, swelling. "I said no." A pause. I watched her shoulder blades jutting and sharp through her ex-fiance's White Sox t-shirt. "Stop," she said. "I told you not to call until Thursday at the earliest." She emphasized the last 3 words. I imagined a black line underscoring them. I ran to the front door, yanked it open, and pressed the doorbell, which ding-donged loudly. Back in the living room, I leaned over the wall cutout to the kitchen. Her mother had placed a vase on the ledge, and I guessed eventually would be knocked over and broken. Hopefully it wasn't expensive. It looked like crystal, but I couldn't tell crystal from glass. There had been white roses in it, but Jess shoved them in the trash 2 seconds after her parents left from their weekend visit. "I've got to go," she said into the phone, giving me a thumbs up for being clever. "Someone's at the door." She untwisted herself and replaced the receiver with a gentle click. Jess's sister had died over the summer in a gruesome car accident with 2 other 17-year-old girls who also died. They'd been at a Rush concert at Rosemont Horizon, and Linda was driving. There were headlines in the local papers above a row of yearbook photos, and the girls, who were all pretty and smiling with straightened teeth and shiny dark hair, neat turtleneck sweaters, Mary Louise Donahoe from the town hall from down the hall freshman year clipped and mailed me the articles because she lived in the same suburb as Jess and read about what had happened. The good thing she did, and a good thing she did because Jess never called to tell me herself. It was a whole folder of clippings, as if Mary Louise had thought I wouldn't believe just one article. Wow, what a telling phrase. She scolds her in her mind for sending her more than one article, assuming the insult that she wouldn't believe just one article. And that's not true, but this is clearly your signal that this woman watches her back, that she lives by her wits, that she's used to scrounging for what she needs, and 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 like the others, bullshit doesn't work on her. Okay. Now, this book takes place at the time when there was a guy they called the Tylenol killer. Remember that? Some guy had poisoned a bunch of Tylenol, I think in Chicago or someplace, and a whole bunch of people bought them and died. And and uh, and so this is the back talk that's going on through most of this novel. It's a great device. Okay, we're going to get to know this silver girl a little better now. And oh boy. It was cool on campus to talk about the Tylenol killer. Even at the frat parties I still went to, though I was a junior and should have outgrown them. I liked being there, especially alone, standing near the keg or the garbage can of punch, eavesdropping. The things I heard. That pathetic dork, a girl would say to another, telling me about his parents' honeymoon in Maui. How dare he think I cared about Maui? Or the girl going a mile a minute to her friend, my boyfriend, like totally, is pissed because I said I like Ronald Reagan because he's cute, like for an old guy, I mean. I know, like Sid. I like Sid for an old guy, or the guy who lifted his beer cup and toasted, here's to you and me and all the children in Africa. Now it was all about the killer on the loose, the murderer among us. Psych majors buzzed importantly with terms like antisocial personality disorder or DSM-3. A freshman girl explained that no way was she using Johnson & Johnson baby powder until the killer was caught, because nothing was stopping him from contaminating that. And her friend said, you don't eat baby powder. We don't know half the ways poison infiltrates. A group of drunk pre-meds argued about why the capsules contained 10,000 milligrams of cyanide when half a gram would do it. Simple sloppiness or purposeful misdirection away from a scientific subject? Student government and poli-sci types round robin blame on Reagan, the CIA, Cuba, Brezhnev, the goddamn Politburo. The Trilateral Commission, anarchists. The mafia, obviously, a voice behind me murmured, but when I spun around, no one was there. Journalism students were certain that cops were protecting someone, but who? The religious studies students pondered the existence of evil. As for me, I did what I always did at these parties, stand at the keg, listen to words drift through the idiotic swirl, out from the loop of people hammering at what they thought was important, disappear, wait. At a frat party, it was possible that no one noticed a girl alone for a long time. The single girl, you, me, standing quietly near the keg until finally someone did. Someone would be slightly intrigued, slightly curious about this girl, me, wondering how and why she was standing alone. Someone would observe that this silent girl looked utterly comfortable within the quiet space of herself, of myself. This someone would not be so at ease himself, but he secretly would want to be. Perhaps he longed to escape chaos, for this coveted silence, the calm of the quiet girl, would be noted and envied. This someone comes early, or maybe he comes late, but he always comes, like bills in the mail, my father might say. And as soon as he speaks, you realize the sham of your silence. You aren't comfortable at all. You aren't comfortable in this quiet place. What you are is trapped. And here's the person to rescue you. You think, to rescue me, to rescue the girl, standing alone. He says, who do you think did it? What about poor sad Penny, you think? wanting her mother. This wasn't a game, you say. I bet we never know. Bet he gets away with it. It'll end up being the perfect crime. No, he says. No, no. There's no such thing as a perfect crime. You smile at him. Sweet boy. Sweet, sweet boy. Then you fuck him anyway. I did. I fucked him anyway. A little Jim Thompson in that, do you think? Okay. Strategies for survival number 6. Thinking. When headaches seized me, I ate baby aspirin. I liked its chalky orange flavor and how my teeth ground the pills into dust. I popped 4 at a time, or 6, or 8, or more. They didn't fix my headaches, like Tylenol did, but I chewed them up anyway. The killer was out there running around. That's what everyone said. But it was equally possible that the killer had been mowed down by a city bus, or died in his sleep. The sweet stories filling his obituary printed in the same paper calling him a cold-blooded killer in shrieking headlines. He might be the guy on the 1140 jet to Oslo, or the guy who delivered mail. He might be someone's dad, mowing the lawn. Everyone talked about them. Everybody talked about when he would be caught, talked about he and him, as if women and girls never once might think about murder. As if women and girls never once might be angry or desperate. As if women and girls never once might scheme out an airtight plan, every detail considered, even, say, a detail like shredding written checklists into a handful of tiny pieces and stuffing some in the neighbor's trash, and some at the bottom of a garbage can in the park, and flushing the rest down a toilet in a McDonald's on an interstate highway crossing, a long, lonely state. As if women and girls never thought this way, never lived a secret life, or wondered about revenge. As if women and girls never stood alone at night, fingers gripping the edge of a porcelain sink, as if they stared as they stared down their reflections in the bathroom mirror, letting silent questions accumulate. Who am I? How did I get here? Now what? As if women and girls might never face only one hard choice after another, as if women and girls might never simply get so very, 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 very tired of doing nothing but thinking round and round in vast loop-de-loops that never ended in a tidy circle, tired of not being allowed to do anything but think and think and think, as if women and girls might never act. Get to know the Silver Girl. She's out there. All right, who else is here? I want to thank you for coming by today. I know this one was a little long. Rose Solari is going to be back this coming Wednesday, and she's got a lot of good stuff for you. These books are all on independent presses, by the way. Leslie Pietryk's book is, what is it? The Unnamed Press. What a great name for a press. And Branka's is on the Speaking Volumes. And of course, the Secret Woman is Alan Squire. Now, you stay here on Alan Squire and scroll down and find that reading by Pritchard and the boys. You're going to love it. And I'll be back next Monday. And thank you so much. And I hope I did these books some justice, because I just love these 3 books. Okay, so this is James J. Patterson, live from the reading room at Alan Squire Publishing, a small press with big ideas. I'll see you next week. Hang in there.